So, Pete, you started up by saying the Department of Defense, and somehow it didn't sound good to me. It didn't sound good. Defense, what are we defense? Why are we defense? So it used to be called the Department of War, and it had a stronger sound. And as you know, we won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything. Now we have a Department of Defense. We're defenders. I don't know. If you people want to, standing behind me, if you take a little vote, if you want to change it back to what it was when we used to win wars all the time, that's okay with me. All right?
That's coming.
You let me know if you want to do it. I think Department of War. It just sounded bad. He said, sir, on behalf of the Department of Defense. Defense. I don't want to be defense only. We want defense, but we want offense too, if that's okay. So you'll make a decision.
Listen, that's not a minor issue here. And it almost seems like there's a bit of schizophrenia with the president and his mentality towards conflict. Because on the one hand, he wants to talk about he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. He talks all the time about, depending on what day of the week it is, either 7, 5, or 10 is one of the terms I've heard. Wars that he ended or almost wars that he prevented. Never been defined what that means. But you see, he's on the one hand talking about, I'm the peace president. You've heard Caroline Leavitt say it 100 times. And, Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. And there's things he puts out on Truth Social about all these wars that he stopped or ended in 20, 30, 40 years they've been going on. But as soon as I stepped in, etc. And then at the same time that you're saying you want to be the peace president and you want a Nobel Peace Prize, now then you're saying you want not the Department of Defense, but the Department of War. You want to go back to the Department of War. Folks, those things don't coexist. You don't escalate the rhetoric on talking about Department of War at the same time you're talking about wanting to be a peace president. They don't coexist. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, we may be getting closer to doing that. He was kind of musing it on that day. But now then, this one here is from the military.com. It says, because the Department of Defense name is enshrined in law, a name change likely requires another act of Congress. Trump, though, has appeared unconcerned that Congress should be an impediment. We're just going to do it, Trump said later. This is last Monday during an event to mark the 4th anniversary of the Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan. I'm sure Congress would go along if we needed that. I don't think we will need that. The amendment would and then this is talking about an amendment that one of the Republican House members is talking about raising to issue in the next defense contract bill. It says the amendment would specifically replace any references to the Department of Defense in federal law and regulation with the Department of War. It would also rename the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of War. Listen, there's a reason why we changed it from the Department of War to the Department of Defense. It was changed in 1947, and it came on the heels of the nuclear bombs that dropped on Hiroshima that ended that war, and, of course, in the ashes of both World Wars I and II. Trump mentions those and says, yay, they were victories, but it's not coincidental that they changed it from the Department of War to the Department of Defense in the aftermath of those two victories, because they came at such profound cost, both in terms of blood and to mankind writ large. And to go backwards in that, it does carry a mentality. And listen, you have to look at this in terms of the whole too. When you're talking about, when you hear the president of the United States say, defend, I don't want to defend. That's what our military is supposed to do. It is supposed to be our national defense. That's what we're supposed to do, is to defend our country. Defend our borders from being attacked. And if some country goes to war with us, that we need to have a military capable of repulsing that attack and then decisively winning if it gets to that. I'm an advocate of that. I still agree to that. I served underneath that with that mentality. The Department of Defense, that we are supposed to defend our country. Now, obviously, we violated that many times in our history, and even in recent histories, we've gone very much on the offense, regardless of what the name of the department was. But to just shed that and say, all right, we're not even going to pretend we're defense. We want to go on the offense. Why do you want to go on the offense? Ask that question. That question needs to be answered by the president. What do you mean you don't lack defense? That's what you're supposed to do, is to defend our country. That's why you have a police force, to defend the law-abiding citizens. That's why you have a national armed forces, to defend your country. Every country has that. If someone now changes and says they want to go on the offense, and I don't want to just be on the defense, obviously we were hardly only on the defense before. But if you take that away, even psychologically, you tell both your own people and potential adversaries and people who shouldn't be adversaries but are afraid they might be, that, hey, we're thinking about coming after you, and we're thinking about even more. Just imagine if you've had restraints with the written on a piece of paper, Defense Department, and now you want to shed even that and say, no, we want to go on the offense. What are people around the world to think? Consider this. Consider it not from the position of the United States. Consider it from the citizens of other countries in the world. When they hear the President of the United States look over and say to the Secretary what has been of Defense, and now saying, you should be the Secretary of War, and I want to go on the offense. In light of, since this president has been inaugurated, talking about he might take the Panama Canal by force, saying he might take Greenland by force, of not ruling out taking Canada by force to become the 51st state. He reportedly refused to rule that out, saying, oh, we probably won't, but I don't rule anything out. Of sending troops to Los Angeles to try and in a domestic law enforcement role, sending them into the District of Columbia in a domestic law enforcement role, threatening to send them to Chicago, to New York, to other cities in the United States, of threatening to use military force into Mexico to go after the drug cartels, etc. That's what people see on the ground. And when people from these countries, they're not going to look at us in a benign way. And if you saw our show earlier today, you already see a big shift in global focus into the East and into the SCO, into the BRICS organizations. These are not things that are positive for us, folks. This is making more people scared of the United States, because they see that a lot of this is not Republican, Democrat, whether it's Biden or Trump or Bush or Obama. They see a lot of these same things. So there's no reason for them to think that whatever Trump does today is suddenly going to be changed tomorrow if there's a different president in the office later on. They're not going to think that, because they see there's pretty much consistency here. We are generating fear among many in the world right now, and it's unhealthy fear. There's one thing to be fear. For example, we're told that we should fear the Lord. We should fear God. That's the beginning of wisdom. So the Bible tells us, and that is right, because that's the creator of the universe, and he is a God of love. And so if you respect and fear him, that's a healthy thing. But this kind of fear for the United States is a decidedly unhealthy thing, because they don't see a lot of love coming from the United States. They don't see us doing win-win things. They see us with our allies, like in these economic deals with South Korea, with Japan, with the European Union, with Australia. They see us using coercive means to exploit our friends to our advantage and their disadvantage. And then, of course, they see that Trump, who wants to be a peace president and says he's going to end all these wars, comes in and has done not only nothing to end the Israeli war against all their opponents, he continues to give approval to it and is apparently prepared to even participate in the expulsion of the people from Gaza, while all the while giving whatever ammunition, weapons, and other support that they need. And then the same thing, claiming that he wants to end the Ukraine war, and instead continuing to give them information, weapons and ammunition and other kinds of support, and refusing to use the leverage he had over the Europeans and the Ukrainians to end that war. He could have done it at any time. He literally could have done it 24 hours in and made a declaration to Ukraine and to the European Union and said, it's over. We're not going to support a losing prospect anymore. You guys either bring it to an end, or you're going to have to prosecute this war all on your own. He could have done that. And almost by force, that would have necessitated bringing this war to an end. Nobody would have liked the outcome, but I promise you that outcome would have been profoundly better for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the United States than what we're facing now. And now Trump, here in just the last week, has said that, I think it was on Friday, we had the and U.S. Ambassador Whitaker to NATO declare that, we're prepared to give $1 billion worth of equipment to Ukraine by letting NATO buy it from us each month. And he didn't put an end date on that. He just said, that's prepared what's going on. That doesn't end wars. That keeps them going. And so if you want somebody like Russia to have an agreement that we backstop to end this in that war, they've got to have some kind of trust in us. And so far, we haven't given them any reason to trust anything that we've said. And if you want China and if you want India to not have coercive measures against us or to review us as an adversary, then we've got to give them a reason not to. And so far, we're doing the exact opposite. So this issue of renaming the Department of War, in light of all of those things that I've mentioned that's been in place since the Trump administration came into power, it's a bad move. It is not good for our country, and it is not good for the mentality that we have, and it is continuing a trend of our actions alienating us in the world and giving others, whether adversaries or allies, reasons to distance themselves from us or outright oppose us. And folks, we could find ourselves in a place someday to where we may desperately need some friends, where we may be in a world of hurt, and they're going to remember all these things, and they're not going to be willing to give it. Or worse, some of our adversaries may one day be in a position where they have power over us that we don't have the ability to extricate ourselves, and they may compound our problems instead of even being neutral. It's a dangerous time right now, and we better wake the hell up and start taking actions that stop the damage. First of all, you just have to stop harming yourself. Then we can slowly start trying to peel things away and move them back in a positive direction. But you got to stop the harm first. And I know I'm not in a position of power, and it's pretty unlikely that President Trump is going to listen to a word that I have to say. But I'm just telling you, if we don't make some changes, we're going to one day find ourselves in a position to where we may not be able to extricate ourselves, and we may not be able to avoid pain, harm, and possibly even war. That's where we are. Appreciate you guys being with us today on this holiday, on this Labor Day here in the United States, and we'll look forward to seeing you. We got some great shows coming up for you the rest of the week. We got Doug McGregor back. You're definitely going to want to hear what he has to say. Larry Johnson, some of our best ones. There are also some other guests that are coming on this week. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks very much, and we'll see you then on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.